wrote an article recently on Trump Derangement Syndrome. And I feel like when this term first came out, it was kind of a joke. And I almost feel like it could be a legitimate diagnosis now. I'd like to hear from you on that.
Because of my view, like, okay, there's just names to a cluster of symptoms. TDS is the same thing. It's a name to a cluster of symptoms. I don't understand why it's not going to be in the DSM. It makes sense. There are people who are truly suffering from Trump Derangement Syndrome. Anything related to Trump, any policy related to Trump, if you bring up Trump, there is just this reaction to like, oh my God. And they go, I mean, there's anxiety attacks. People go into panic attacks. People can't sleep because of it. People can't eat because of it. People go into isolation because of Trump, or people who voted for Trump, or just a presence around them that freaks them out. Oh my God, you're going to kill me. It's unbelievable. And if it sticks and it stays, and as we know, a lot of the DSM diagnosis, their threshold is like if you experience these symptoms for more than 2 weeks, you pretty much have this diagnosis. TDS has been around for years. So yeah, absolutely. Give it these symptoms a name. And it's very real. And I see it all the time.
To have the fact that like people are absolutely deranged over Trump and like feel really justified and like doing crazier and crazier things to fight back against things that Trump is doing. So like overall, I think it's like a very dangerous situation. And I don't want to see really good, like well-meaning and good people kind of get like sucked into this because like it's sold to them in like nice language, or like their empathy is exploited, or like whatever sorts of manipulations are used to kind of get them on board with something that they're like absolutely not prepared for and like interested in.
I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday who was asking me to help explain Trump voters to them. Like, how can people vote for Trump? I just don't see it. And I was like, well, I think the problem is you think they see Trump the same way you do and just don't care. You see him as this racist, misogynistic, rapist.
How would you vote for Hitler?
Right. And you think they're just like, yeah, he's a terrible human being, but I just don't care. I'm going to vote for him anyway because I'm evil and I care about my own interests. And I'm like, I think maybe if you could try to understand how they see him, you might not agree with them at all, but you might understand how they vote the way they do. You just have to believe that they actually believe what they're telling you.
It is a cult. It is a cult psychology. It is propaganda is used, all the things, jargon, isolation from family, black and white thinking, all of that. I had one client move out of the country after the election because she is gay and she thinks she's going to be thrown in a cage. Like really, really believes that.
Wow.
And
can you break that down for me? 'Cause, I mean, I've heard stories like this, that's happening, and this, you've seen it up close and personal. This person is so committed to this ideology that they believe that they're in mortal danger.
Yeah.
You know, if they're around when Donald Trump is president, even though he already has been for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it is, it was really interesting to try to challenge it at first. Because I treated it like any other, what I consider sort of delusional or reactive idea. And she was not open at all to it being challenged. And so then it became, okay, so how do we help you do this skillfully? How do we help you? I'm going to be on board with you in doing this without as much damage as possible. And the thing so let me break this down a little bit, is that what she explained to me is that Project 2025 and in her gay community, Project 2025 is absolutely going to happen. Trump was lying when he was saying he didn't know what it was. And if anyone else says that's not going to happen, then they're stupid. So there's no tolerance of looking at what happened before. It's just not, it's not even engaged with. It's Project 2025.
From the things I've heard about it, it was like, well, Republicans want to restrict abortion, but that's pretty much every election. Why is it now suddenly this, I need to panic moment?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's an interesting probably result of the mass formation psychosis, which is, it's been 4 years of indoctrination of Trump as a fascist, Trump as Hitler, with that crazy thing in the Madison Square Garden rally where CBS actually, or was it NBC, actually showed a Hitler rally while they were showing his rally, saying the last rally was a Hitler rally. It's like the indoctrination so obvious they're not even trying to hide it.
Yeah. And then people, you have these would-be assassins, and it's like, I don't know about you. I grew up with this kind of thought experiment. If you had a time machine taking you back to 1930 or 1940 or what have you, would you kill Hitler? And it's like, of course you would. You could save millions of lives if you killed Hitler. Well, guess what? It's 2025, and literally Hitler is president right now. Anything and everything you do is justifiable at this point. That's the mindset.
It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on my campus, it was like, the day after the election, people are speaking in hushed voices as though like a great trauma had happened. It was almost like I don't want to exaggerate, but it almost felt like the way people talked about like the day after 9/11. Like just this great, horrific thing has happened to our country, There were some college campuses that had therapy dogs come in. They need to soothe the students, It was like a great, like mass hysteria. One of the diagnoses that really stands out to me is borderline personality disorder. Like I see somebody who will say Donald Trump, they'll hear something from Donald Trump and they'll say, I don't feel safe right now. I feel like I'm under attack. Like that, just extreme emotional instability by what most would consider a pretty tame stimulus, if that makes sense.
Yes. And you're right. Borderline personality is a great example of kind of like the TDS. It's this extreme reaction where your emotions are so dysregulated and you don't know how to like pull it together and calm down and just look at the facts, check the facts like we do in DBT, it's like, or radical acceptance, like kind of radically accept that this is your reality. Like all of that goes and they get a free pass. Like they don't need to do radical acceptance. They don't need to check the facts. Like they have a justifiable reason to respond this way because, oh my God, Trump is horrible and his supporters are going to kill us. Like that is the idea that's being spread within the therapy sessions, within therapy, that there is, I hate this terminology that they use, there is a lived experience now that they have, and they have a right to feeling the oppression that they feel, and we have to basically affirm that to them. It's like, what? That goes against everything we were taught in therapy. We were supposed to help them kind of radically accept what's happening to them and still move forward. We were supposed to check facts and see, is this actual reality that you're envisioning in your head, or is this just made up?
Like the whole idea of I can't talk to this person anymore because they voted for someone or something like that, right? Like you're making a choice. That's a choice that you're making in your life. Now, you might feel like you have no choice in that matter, like because they did something that's so bad that, you have to make that choice. But you are essentially choosing to give up on a relationship. And if you're choosing to give up on a relationship that doesn't have any actual like issues other than, disagreement politically, then I think that you probably would have given up on that relationship with some other vice at some point, because you probably have some relational issues that you don't know how to handle. So you're coming, your brain is giving you a good reason why, and then, a way out where you don't have to deal with it anymore.
We're all going to die. It reminds me of Greg Lukianoff's reverse cognitive behavioral therapy, as opposed to, hey, this is catastrophizing. It's probably not going to be that bad. Let's look at what might actually most likely happen. And instead, it's like, no, this is a level 10 emergency at all times. And if you disagree, you're a fascist.
Well, if you don't have a stable identity structure, again, kind of going back to the personality piece, then anything you hear that you're fearful of, you are going to completely believe is real, because your system doesn't have nuance of alert. It's on high alert at all times.
My own thinking on Trump has really evolved a lot. I did not vote for him the first two times he ran, and I had a very mild case of Trump Derangement Syndrome. It wasn't full blown, but I didn't like the guy. I was relieved when he was not in office anymore. But I'm wondering now if he isn't exactly the sort of strong father figure that we need. Obviously, he's a flawed person. I think an armchair diagnosis of narcissism is called for. I mean, we can do that. But he's a lot more than that. And it's weird because if you look at his opposition, if you look at the political left right now, a lot of the criticism is basically a critique of tradition, authority, male authority, masculinity itself, father figures. It's like all of it is, all of the criticism from the left is directed at that type of figure. And here he is, this, overly confident, big-voiced man who's made a huge success and has been the ultimate alpha male. I mean, it's just going to trigger every possible, emotional wound of somebody who sees the entire world through this sort of mythology, really, that strong male leader bad.
Yeah.
Strong male leader patriarchy.
The difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is authenticity. And I think like Harris would always have these like press releases that were super polished and looked good and everything. And Donald Trump is sending these tweets that kind of sound crazy sometimes. And there might be a misspelled word. He's like shooting from the hip. But like, Donald Trump sent that tweet. I think my favorite Donald Trump quote is someone asked him, like, what do you think when Joe Biden tweeted blah, blah, blah about you? And he instantly goes, Joe Biden didn't write that. Someone who did very well in school wrote that. And it's just like, whether you like Trump or not, like that's who he is. Like, he's not like a PR team. Like, that's him. I think like whether you think tariffs are good or whatever, people are craving authenticity.
Absolutely. Realness and authenticity are the most respectable things in my personal opinion. And I don't think that there's anything better. But I mean, his tweets are hysterical, and I love that.
And we saw that with so many white liberal women, young women, when Donald Trump won. They were shaving their heads, and I never want to have sex again. And I think, for goodness sake, he's the man's going to serve 4 years. The reality is he'll probably not do much because governments don't actually do that much when they get any power anyway. He'll be out in 4 years' time. You might get Democrats back, you might not. You might say, who knows? But shaving your head or going to get yourself, going to have your fallopian tubes tied up because you don't want to have kids because Donald Trump's in power. It's just madness to me. It's all a bloody act. If you went for it's all this, I must process my emotion, but I must do it very visibly on TikTok to my however many thousand followers. And you just think, do you need to cry? I mean, the amount of women that I saw crying on TikTok when Donald Trump won, I was just stunned. I was just like, what's wrong with these young women? And that's where I come back to, like, when I was talking about gender stuff. What have we done with these young women that they have zero ability to realise that this is madness? You sitting crying on your phone, shaving your head because your man you don't like, who many people don't like, has got into power.
I had probably a strong case of Trump Derangement Syndrome in 2016. I think it led me to try to understand where people were coming from. Because I just assumed that a majority of the country I lived in were full of Nazis, and so I think it motivated me to try to understand other people, which I think I do a better job of now. So it's kind of interesting with Trump because that archetype fits so many. It's so many different people. It's the father who told you to be on time when you're coming home. It's the boss who told you have to stay late. That type of archetype of somebody telling me what to do. I'm picturing, I don't know if you know, Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It. Like the man that you're sticking it to looks like Donald Trump in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's what we saw, especially with younger white liberal females right after the election. You've got people, crying, throwing things, shaving their heads. It's a complete and utter emotional breakdown. And it seemed to spread like COVID, but through ideas. How do you explain that kind of post-election meltdown?
Well, it's what the famous psychologist Andrew Zaleski, said was the historical phase, and that's basically just this idea that, you have, like you say, this emotional breakdown that becomes a contagion effect. It's amplified now by social media, but you can even look back in 2016 when Trump first won. There were cry rooms on campuses, and then you had, of course, the footage that we all saw, from the George Floyd death, where these white especially white liberal females, were sort of, professing their undying devotion to this new social justice ideology. So it was the same thing. And then you saw that repeated again to a certain extent, post 2024 election. But yeah, it's just this historical breakdown that has a mass-like contagion effect, and that's made even worse now by, social media. I mean, you saw it the most on TikTok, and, of course, we're all posting videos on Twitter or TikTok, but it's amplified by social media, but it definitely exists in the actual real-life culture as well. So, absolutely.
It's, I definitely think there's an element of real legitimate emotion behind it. There's some legitimate distress going on, but there's also an aspect of it that's a theatrical performance. Before this shaving a head or crying or what have you, they set up the camera, right?
Yeah. So there's thought going on. If you're genuinely feeling, I think you're right. If you're genuinely feeling emotion, like if a close relative dies, you're going to really feel grief, unless you really dislike them. You're going to really feel. Say it's a really beloved grandmother or whatever. You're going to have an outpouring of grief. It's going to be instant as well, and it's going to be real. Whereas, if that happened to me, I wouldn't necessarily think to set up my tripod first to then film myself crying to strangers on the internet. But that's kind of what we have now with COVID, with everything that's went on, with how social media is just everywhere in our lives. That you cannot almost have this emotion without it being a performance of emotion. And as you say, there probably is some quite real distress. Maybe not distress even, but just uncomfortableness or like, oh crap, the wrong guy get in. But you've got to perform it for it to be real. And again, that comes back to the validation. It comes back to the likes. The ping, 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 ping. Everybody likes you for having this emotional outbreak, which we think is probably crap, really. But we've got to kind of do it. So there's this element of resilience which doesn't exist. Performative art, which does exist, and then there's somewhere in the middle where there's, most normal people kind of sit. And it sounds like I've got a real problem with young women. I do, because I'm a woman, not a young woman anymore, but I'm a woman. But I think it's because I look at these young women and I think, God, we really need to help you. There's something not right mentally in what's happening to our young people right now. Coming through, and I do think resilience is not being built into these kids. I think that has to be built in. You can't learn resilience. You've got to get it as you go through life.
So I think for a lot of people, I can't talk to my adult son because he voted for Trump. How much did you talk to your adult son before that? How was your relationship when he was 6 years old? Right? Like those are the questions that I ask. And then I ask, how is your relationship with other people in your life? How's your relationship even within your political circles? And so I think on an individual level, I think a lot of people who already had struggles are, kind of like attached to a movement where you could control relationships through it and have a justification for it.